Demon Kissed, Chapter 29. "Quit watching my ass, Cade, and watch what I can do to this kind of beat," Aaron said, and pulled one door open. The music was teeth-rattlingly loud, bass-heavy, hard trance, and she loved it. She'd loved it when she was a little girl, and had loved this floor when she was last here 4 months ago. She could feel the beat in her blood, rushing through her body and giving her a high like nothing else she had ever known. She felt the heat from Cade's body as he moved up behind her and tipped her head back to look at him. "I had intended to make this floor our first stop of the night, but seeing the way you were walking down that hallway—" "Have at it, girl, and show me what you think you got. Just give me a minute to talk to the DJ and announce you as my new partner," Cade said, bending to speak in her ear, and she felt his grin against her skin when she shivered. "Just hurry, Cade. I gotta let the music have me soon," Aaron said, swaying to the beat, and barely heard him chuckle before he was gone and she was left alone on the edge of the dance floor. Assuming that Cade would keep his word and only take a minute to talk to the DJ and make the announcement, she took a second to scan the crowded floor. No one was paying her any attention at the moment, but she knew that would change as soon as she hit the floor and started to dance. It always did every time she danced here. It was like none of these people had ever seen a good-looking girl dance before. The music cut off, and Cade's voice boomed out of the speakers hidden around the massive room. She smiled a bit when she heard him cursing faintly as the microphone screeched, and felt herself blushing at the way he introduced her as his new dance partner. "Sorry for the interruption, folks, but I need to make a small announcement and introduce the beautiful and sexy young woman who will be my partner for the evening, Erin Malone," he said, and a bright spotlight found her where she stood by the entrance doors, blinding her for a second before it veered away to shine on him. "We will be performing down in the Inferno later tonight, and we hope you'll be there too. Now, without further ado, my new partner," he finished, and loud throbbing bass filled the air before the echo of his shout had even begun to fade. Aaron hesitated for a second, suddenly overcome with stage fright. Then the crowd parted, and he was beside her again. "Show 'em how it's done, baby. I'll be right here on the floor with you, watching every move you make," he said, giving her a slight push between the shoulders, and she started moving slowly to the beat as she crossed the floor to the center. Not the way he probably expected, but she was moving across the floor, and after another second the music had her. "I don't want to show a bunch of strangers the way it's done, but I do want to show Cade what I can do. And really all this is an exhibition of my abilities on the dance floor. Truly no different than an audition, and I went to plenty of those," she thought, and closing her eyes, gave herself over completely to the rhythm of the music. She dropped to her knees, head down when the bass dropped, and rose up when the beat picked up. She spun, leapt, writhed, and shimmied to the beat, feeling her still healing injuries twinge with every move. But the minor pain was drowned under the exhilaration of dancing again, and she felt a grin curve her lips. Cade prowled around the inside edge of the circle of the crowd, watching Aaron move, and felt lust slam into his gut, hard and fast. The woman moved like pure desire given form. She moved like every man's darkest fantasy. She flowed like water over the dance floor, swift, graceful, and timelessly beautiful. "Oh, yeah. I am in so much trouble here," he thought, catching her around the waist when one of her spinning leaps threw her into him. "You know, I can hear everything you're thinking right now, right? Come on, Cade. Take me on and see if you can beat me. It's the only way you will ever be able to find out how it would feel to have me under you. Alistair challenged me once on the floor dedicated to 1980s rock and roll," Aaron whispered in his mind, and spun away from him. She stopped and faced him as the bass dropped again. Then a siren began to sound, and she hopped backward to the bass, making a come-get-me motion with her hands to the rhythm of the siren. "What happened after he challenged you?" Cade thought to her, and began to time his prowling footsteps to the rhythm of the bass. She took note of this and grinned at him. "Well, come on then, bad boy. Hit me with your best shot, and if we tie, I'll answer your question," she said, joyful laughter in her mental tones, and he felt a predatory smile shape his lips at the playfully open challenge. "Are you sure you want to challenge me, little girl? You've already stated the terms for if I win. Are you really that confident?" he thought in return, switching his rhythm to the hard beat of the drums, and began stalking her around the dance floor. "Yes, Cade, to both questions. I want to dance with you tonight, and that's it. However, if you do win here, I will abide by my word. Win, tie, or lose, I get to have the time of my life first," she whispered in his mind seriously, then added as she changed her rhythm to follow the faster tempo of the synthesizer, "But I gotta tell ya, I have fought more battles on this dance floor than I can remember, and I've nearly never lost. Cade, I used to come here every time I didn't have patrol, and I have hit every floor I could since working that security job." She stopped moving when the music cut out. "Well, well, well, if it isn't my lovely nemesis, and now I finally know your name," a smooth, cultured, baritone voice said through the speakers, and Erin rolled her eyes before tossing her head. "Lovely to hear your voice again, Floor Master Razoul," she said sweetly as she turned to face the huge stage, and then added with friendly sarcasm, propping her left hand on her hip, "What do you want this time? Another butt-kicking, perhaps? Or do you just want me to pay my cover charge and get my ass to a different floor?" "Neither, my dear. I simply came to see my boss get his ass handed to him by our newest crew member," a tall, broad-shouldered man with extremely long, nearly black-red hair said as he weaved his way through the crowd. "Razoul d'Alister, at your service, my beauty," he said, stopping in front of her and bowing to her. Erin shook her head and put her finger under his chin, raising his head to look at her. "Lighten up, Raz. You nearly had me 8 months ago, and I know I've been too busy to come and play with you lately, Tiger, but you're not my cat," she said, then leaned closer to him and whispered into his ear. "But then, you already knew that, didn't you, pretty Tiger Man?" Cade watched and listened to them as they spoke, noting how comfortable she seemed with Razoul. "Ah, but you are the one who beat me last time, and close only counts for horseshoes and hand grenades. I will beat you one night, my beauty, and collect my prize. Tonight, though, you challenged the general floor manager of the entire club, and I just have to see who wins this one," Razoul said, and grinned over her head at Cade after he straightened from his bow. "You, my friend, are in for one hell of a fight," he said. "Since when has anyone given me a true challenge, Razoul?" Cade asked, watching the other man as he put one arm around Erin's shoulders and noted that she was completely fine with it, as he thought about the way she had been moving to the music a bit ago. Raz was right. He was going to have one hell of a time beating her, but he was confident that he could do it and have fun while he did it. "Before you answer that, Raz, is Mondo around? If I can't dance right now, I might as well talk shop with him while you boys discuss the supposed weaknesses I may have," Erin said. "Yes, he is. He's over by the bar, holding up the wall and doing his level best to look menacing," he said, and she laughed as she moved away from them. Ain't hard for a man as big as he is. Later, Cade. Come find me when you're ready to head to the other floors you're supposed to do a show on tonight," she said over her shoulder and disappeared into the crowd. He watched her go and wondered precisely how often she had come to the club since the night she had worked security for them, as she paused here and there to talk to a few of the regulars. "She's been here nearly every night for 9 years now, and she's made a few casual friends. She's gained rivals and made several enemies, too," Arazul stated, and Cade glanced at him. "I didn't ask," he said, moving off the dance floor and waving at Liza to indicate that she should restart the music. "You didn't have to," the slightly shorter man said, then added, "The only floors that little lady hasn't taken apart on this side are the last 6, and that's only because she can't get past Renzo on floor 7. "Can't get past him how? She told me she's nearly undefeated," he said. "Oh, she is. Have no fear of that. They keep tying is all, and he made a deal with her. She could move down to the next floor if she beat him. She's not managed to beat him yet, so she's stuck," Razoul said, and shrugged carelessly as the music started again. "When did she start challenging the floor masters?" he asked curiously. "She didn't. Alistair's the one who actually started it, around 2 months after she started showing up, and the rest of us just began making a game of it each night she came in," was the reply he got, and he was tempted to ask what had happened on the dance floor the night Alistair challenged her, but decided to wait for Erin to tell him herself. "I was given to understand that she has an aversion to vampires and other supernatural beings, yet you seem to know her quite well, Razoul," Cade observed, and the man laughed. "That she does seem to, my friend, that she does seem to. However, when little girl comes here, she's here for one thing and one thing alone. She's here to dance. Everyone here tonight knows that, especially the predators on the floor, and if they get on her nerves, she'll help Armando show 'em the door," he said, turning to watch the floor, then chuckled, adding, "Looks like she's just got another challenger." Cade turned, scanning the room, and spotted her over on the stage just as the music cut out and the speakers crackled with static. "Looks like our little girl just accepted a new challenge from the big boss. Let's watch and see if Nick can take her out." Liza's smoky drawl drifted through the silent dance hall, and Cade's eyes widened when Dominic stepped into the spotlight beside Erin. "What's he doing here? He's supposed to be at the house tending to Alistair," he growled. "I was going to. The girls had it well in hand, though, and you did call for backup." Nick's voice rang through his mind, followed by Erin's laughter, and he gritted his teeth. "Sometimes I hate you, Nick. Really, I do. You could have let me know you were coming in," he stated flatly, then was distracted from his conversation when Liza spoke again. "Any words for your latest victim, little girl?" she asked over the mic. "I don't leave victims, girlfriend. I leave bodies," Erin said into the stage mic, propping one hand on her hip and looking at her nails as though bored. She glanced out over the floor, then up at the DJ's booth, and added, "How about you ask the bodies out on the floor if they got something to say to him?" The roar of the crowd that answered her suggestion was deafening and a little frightening to hear. Cade just stared at the stage and the small woman standing next to his boss, not quite knowing what to think about how this night was turning out. "Does this happen every time someone challenges her?" he asked Razoul quietly. "Pretty much. But she only takes the stage when it's a formal challenge, as she calls them. To say this is unusual would be an understatement, though," the vampire said, and leaned against the wall beside him. Cade looked at him intently for a moment, then looked back at the stage and asked, "Unusual how?" Someone at the back of the crowd had started a chant of "Bring her down," and the rest of the crowd had taken it up. Aaron smiled faintly and blew a kiss to the crowd. "She doesn't usually flirt with her challenger," Rasul said, and he resisted the urge to stare at the man in total consternation. "Well, you can hear 'em, boss man. What you gonna do?" Liza said cheerfully over the sound. Nick held up one hand until the noise died down, then leaned down to the mic. "I believe I shall endeavor to follow their suggestion, Liza," he said, and the crowd cheered. "You all heard the man. Bring it, vampire, and we'll see whose body hits the floor tonight. Madam DJ, my song, if you please," Aaron said with a grin when he had straightened, and the crowd went a little nuts as the first licks of Two Drowning Pools' Bodies blasted from the speakers. She was already moving, and the beat hadn't even kicked in yet, but then so was Nick, and he was matching her move for move. "Well, would you look at that? I've not seen this happen before," Rasul said, and waved at the crowded dance floor. Cade looked, and then just stared for a moment. What he was seeing had to be a trick of light and shadow. It had to be. He glanced back at the stage when the beat kicked in, then looked back out at the floor and shook his head. Nick and Aaron were going at it like a pair of prized fighters to the beat, and every time they brought their arms down in time to the lyrics, someone in the crowd would fall to the floor. "Is Tony piping something into the building again?" he asked when people started hitting the floor in twos and threes. "Not that I know of, and I don't think he'd do that again this millennium. Nick fair killed him for it last time, and his cousins took him to the cleaners for it," he said, then snorted and added, "Though if he's been in the tequila again, it wouldn't surprise me." The song drew to a close, and both men looked back toward the stage. "Well, this is a first, folks. The boss is still standing, and little girl looks like she needs a second round. What do you say? Should we go for round 2? Liza purred into her mic, and the crowd shouted back. She laughed and said, "Okay, boys and girls, round 2. Here we go." The opening bars to Roxette's "The Look" came through, and Cade saw Aaron grin like a feral creature. Nick's responding grin was just as feral and showed his fangs. As the beat picked up, they both began circling on the stage, trading dance moves like blows in a sparring match, and Cade watched them a bit enviously. He was the one who was supposed to be up there with her, not Nick. Why he felt a little jealous, he didn't know, but he was, and he didn't like it. Jealousy wasn't an emotion he was familiar with, and an emotion he hadn't thought himself capable of. The Fae didn't get jealous, after all, and he was nearly pure-blood Fae. The song changed again to Foreigner's Hot-Blooded, this time without Liza's commentary, and he could see why. The pair on the stage had begun dancing in sync and were heating up the room with their moves. Nick was dancing so close behind Aaron that he had to be brushing against her back with every step he took, and she seemed to be enjoying it. His hands swept down the top of her arms. Then he swept them back up from her wrists from the underside, and she raised them up above her head as he brought his head down next to hers, and ran his hands back down her arms to her sides. Her head fell back on his shoulder, and she put her hands in his hair as he slid his hands to her hips, and pulled her closer to him as they moved to the beat. Aaron ran her hands from Nick's hair down his arms to his wrists, and suddenly spun away from him. Nick caught one of her hands and spun her back into his arms, dipping her back over one arm and gripping one of her thighs to bring her lower body close to his as the song drew to a close. Nick released her after the last note faded into silence, and she stood beside him, breathing hard and grinning. "Now that Was one hot dance number, my friends, Liza said, her voice sounding a little breathless, and the crowd clapped in hearty response. And that was also a tie, ladies and gentlemen. If you will recall, Cade said they will be performing together on the Inferno stage downstairs later tonight, and I strongly suggest that you go watch them. Nick said into the microphone, and Erin smiled broadly as she scanned the crowded floor looking for something. Her dark eyes searched the room until they found Cade standing next to our Azul in the shadows on the edge of the dance floor, and she grinned. "Sides, folks. My partner and I have some unfinished business to take care of before we go downstairs. Cade, darlin', come up here and dance with me," Erin said, and held out her left hand to him. "What will you do if I refuse?" he asked conversationally, and began walking toward the stage. "I'll go home, and you'll look like an idiot later tonight," she said, dropping her hand to her hip, and he saw greenish-blue sparks glittering in her eyes as she watched him come closer. "No man wants to look like an idiot, baby. Why would you do me like that?" he drawled, and saw goosebumps erupt on her arms at his low tone. "Any man who willingly makes himself out to be an ass deserves to look like an idiot," she purred back, and Nick laughed. She glanced at him briefly and said, "You and I are through for now, boss. Go on now and do some paperwork or something," she said. She made a shooing motion at him with her hand and returned her gaze to Cade. "Ladies and gents, I do believe I have just been dismissed. What say you lot?" he said, and the crowd around Cade roared their agreement, and Nick sighed dramatically before saying, "Fine. I shall go, Madam Butterfly. However, I shall leave you with a bit of punishment as well." He walked behind her and slapped her on the ass on his way by, before turning into mist and swiftly exiting the dance hall through one of the vents in the ceiling. "Seriously?" Erin barked after Dom, and his laughter echoed through the room. "Eerie, love, you know it won't do you any good to get mad at him. He's a cat, after all, and cats go out of their way to annoy the crap out of the people they like." Mark's voice drifted through her mind, his tone sleepily amused, and her heart skipped a beat. He'd been calling her that for a while now, and every time he said it, her heart would skip a beat, and her head would go light, as though all the blood in her body had rushed up there. "I'm sorry, Kitty. Did I wake you?" Erin asked him, and looked directly into Cade's dark blue eyes as he climbed the steps onto the stage. "Really, no man should look that good in an outfit from 50 years ago," she mused, and quickly ran her gaze from his head to his footwear again. "No, you didn't wake me, and I can tell you're busy. I shall return to my slumber and leave you to your fun. You deserve it, Erin," Merrick responded in her mind, and she felt him leave. "'Bout time you got up here, good-lookin'. I got a question for you," she said to Cade, bringing her gaze back to his, and seeing the heat in his eyes half hidden by his eyelashes. Her breath caught for a moment, and she swallowed as her heart started pounding in her chest like a drum. "I may be biting off more than I can chew with this one, but damn if it won't be fun trying to drive him crazy and have it come out a tie at the same time tonight," she thought, and drew in a steadying breath when he started circling her slowly like a fox on the hunt. "What's your question, little dancer?" he asked, and his deep voice rumbled like distant thunder, making a chill race down her spine and goosebumps spring up on her skin again. "Would you mind if I requested the DJs play the boss's list?" she asked evenly. "No, I wouldn't mind. I will ask why, though, for the crowd's sake and my own curiosity," he said in her ear, and she chuckled. "You're gonna have to do better than that, Fox, if you want to make me really want you. Match or beat what Nick just did at any time tonight, and you might just get somewhere close to where you really want to be right now. She thought to him, and heard him chuckle as he came back around to face her. I would like to dance to every song on it, or nearly every song on it, in honor of my first dance tonight and the excellent partner I had, she said, and he smirked. His mix is a bit psychotic, but I can dance to it. The question here, little dancer, is, can you? He said teasingly, and she smiled. How does that one really old song go again? Oh, yeah. Anything you can do, I can do better. She teased him back, and he grinned. Sounds like a challenge. Match, set, and begin, baby. Hit me with your best shot, he said, returning her earlier words to her, and Foreigners Waiting for a Girl Like You began to play a second later. The lights went down, then came back up, spotlighting the stage in strobing arcs to the rhythm of the song, and Cade took her in his arms, lifting her a bit off of the floor as he did. She noticed that his clothes had changed when the lights went out, and he was now wearing a black, cable-knit sweater, tight-fitting black jeans, and black sneakers. Neat trick, she commented, and nearly purred when she discovered that he'd let his hair down, too. Grinning, Aaron sank her hands into the dark, rich red softness of it, where it flowed over his shoulders, letting him have his way and have the lead. Isn't it, though? He quipped, and took her through a series of steps that she found easy to follow. A little too easy, maybe, but she wasn't about to complain. Not when it felt so good to be held close in his arms like this. You know, Kate, technically I could consider the fact that my feet aren't actually touching the floor as cheating on your part, she said, chuckling a bit. I'll set you down, if you like, Aaron, he said, and made to do just that. I don't think so, partner. I like being in your arms at the moment, and the rest of the night will be soon enough to trounce you at our little game. Besides, this gives me a chance to catch your rhythm, she said, tugging on his hair with one hand and sliding the other behind his neck. You're dangerous to a man's peace of mind. You know that, he said softly, tightening his grip around her waist, and she chuckled as he led her through a couple of turns. One or two guys might have told me the same at one time or another, she said, looking up at him through her lashes. Though she'd been trying not to see his thoughts, she found some of them too good to ignore, and after the bit of dirty dancing that Dominic had done with her, she examined Cade's thoughts with more interest than was probably wise. One thing she was relieved to find, the attraction she felt was actually returned, and not just by the man she was currently dancing with either. Aaron had discovered that both Cade and Dominic wanted her physically, and the reason behind their hesitation in making a move on her earlier tonight while dancing with Dominic. He hadn't noticed her in his mind, and that bothered her quite a bit. But she had found it useful. She knew she could trust him to be there if she needed him, and through his memories of those around him, she had learned that she could trust Alistair and Cade to do the same. Aaron had learned that she could trust them all to be there if she needed them. She'd learned that Merrick was in love with her, that Alistair was in love with her, and she had learned that Dominic was beginning to fall in love with her. Dominic never guarded his mind against her, and over the last few days she had been looking at his memories while he was working in his studio or in council with the others talking strategy. She knew that she wasn't the first woman they had fallen in love with. Hell, she had figured that out all on her own. All of them were older than Moses, and she couldn't have been the first for any of them. But they had lost the first woman to ever truly own their hearts centuries ago, and she didn't think that she could live up to her memory. Oh, Aaron could try to live up to it. She could even try changing who she was at heart to fit who they had been. She could do many things to match the memory of the woman they had loved so deeply, and knew she would completely lose herself in the process if she tried. Where have you gone, babe? Kate asked on a breath, as the song ended and another took its place. This one was faster, with a killer beat, and they separated from each other. Nowhere important enough to talk about right now, she whispered, and smiled a bit sadly. Meaning you will tell me later? He asked when the music required them to move close together again, and she shook her head. No promises, Kate. I can dance with you tonight. I can give you my friendship. But I can't afford for you to win my heart, and I can't promise to tell you what I'm thinking. I'll tell you this, though. This has been the best hour and a half of my life, thanks to you and my new boss. She thought to him, and focused on catching his rhythm instead of the thoughts that had driven her to agree to go to the club as Dominic had ordered her to.